Welcome to episode 35 of Mathghamhain Morsels. Again in the Sanguine Start series, and this is a bit weird for those who have watched the video before. I already have something cooked in camera? What's the deal about that? Well, it's partially I'm trying out something new, partially I was an idiot with my tech, so this video is going to be interesting. Let me know if you like this way. If so, I might have a new way that I shoot these videos. If not, I'll go back to my normal, either in the next video or the video after that. But as you can see, I have something that looks fantastically delicious, fresh out of an oven, still kind of bubbly around the edges with a nice crust to it. This is, of course, mac and cheese. And this is a absolutely sinful mac and cheese that I made from scratch, and I'll be showing you guys how to make it. Starting from a bit of a modified bechamel, all the way through to adding the cheese and how you mix it together to prep it for the oven. And at the end, you'll actually see me cut into this beauty. But this thing's amazing. It has a bunch of different cheeses in it. So let's get right into how to make it, shall we? Okay, so here we are in the kitchen, and this sauce, we're going to start with the mother sauce. So you see I have butter in the pan, and I'm going to be melting this down on a low, medium, low heat. Just going to make sure that it melts really slowly because I don't want the butter to separate as it's heating up. I want it to stay nice and creamy, just delicious, all one bit. You don't want to brown it at all. You just want this to be cooking up nice and slow. That's one of the things that you need to make sure you do when you make this sauce. You need to make sure that it is done nice and slow. Once all the butter ends up getting melted, then you can start adding in your flour. And you'll be adding in about the same amount of flour as you do to butter. So it's a 1-to-1 ratio. You're going to want to make sure that, again, you keep it on a slow heat and let it just come together. And you want to cook it just enough for the flour to no longer have that raw flour taste to it. Just takes a little bit of time, but you want to keep whisking it. You want to keep it all going round. You don't want it to brown any. You just want it to get rid of that raw flavor and allow that butter to melt beautifully. Once that's good, once you have it melted down, the flour is cooked out, then we'll be continuing on. And this is a bechamel. I do it a bit different. I make a almost sinfully indulgent bechamel, since I use heavy cream as my main bit of dairy. You use milk normally, but I use heavy cream, and then I'll cut it with some whole milk if it gets too thick. So it takes a little bit of time, not very much, in order for the flour to cook out. Just keep on stirring it, make sure that you don't let it sit. And again, you want to make sure that it doesn't start to separate, that you don't get brown butter. So I start by adding in some heavy cream, and this is entirely by eye and by how it feels. I'm probably adding about 3 to 4 times as much cream as I did butter. Well, might be more. Yeah, probably about 3 times as much cream as I did butter. And you just want to make sure that that roux that you were going, that blonde roux, that flour and butter mixture, gets entirely incorporated. So again, you want to whisk it, and you want to be fairly energetic in your whisking, because you want that to all get mixed in, and then You keep this on a fairly low temperature. The highest temperature that I put this on the entire time that I'm cooking on stovetop is I go up to medium low. Most of the time I'm at a low medium low, or just medium low itself, and when I get towards the end I put it down to low. So you want this to thicken up. You whisk it every so often. It doesn't have to be a constant whisk. You whisk, you let it sit for a few moments, it's perfectly fine, kept on low temp, then you whisk it again, and you want to make sure that you just let this thicken up beautifully. Like I said, this becomes a sinfully indulgent bechamel because it has more fat from the heavy cream that I use. So you get this unctuous, fatty goodness of the bechamel. This is a sauce that's known as a mother sauce. It's one of, I believe there's 7 mother sauces. And it's just a matter of low temperature, whisking up, and making sure that the sauce doesn't break. Because if it breaks, it is a pain in the ass to try to save. And a good chunk of the time, if it breaks, it's broken. You start from scratch. So, don't get impatient. Keep it on a low temperature. And keep whisking. You want to get it so that it just starts really coating the sides as you're whisking and coating your whisk. And that's when you know that it's in the right realm for you to move on. I ended up getting mine a little bit too thick as this went on. But, like I said, all I did in order to cut how thick it was, I put some whole milk in, and the whole milk thinned it right back out to the right workable texture. So this is where it's getting a bit too thick. But I try to add in my cheeses, which the first round of cheese are the larger chunks of cheese that I wasn't able to shred down nicely. So I'm using a smoked Gouda, 2 different smoked cheddars, a sharp cheddar, and a fair bit of Parmesan. So the ratios of that is I'm using of the smoked cheddar and the sharp cheddar together. I'm using about, I want to say 3/4 of a pound, little bit. Actually, no, it's probably more like a pound of that. And then to that, it's 3/4 of a pound. Just thinking back, I used about 4-ounce blocks. So 3/4 of a pound of the cheddar. Then to that, I added another 1/4 pound of the Parmesan and smoked Gouda together, and that was about a 1-to-1 for that. For the cheddars, it was about 2-to-1. So 2 parts that smoked cheddar to 1 part just sharp cheddar. Once the cheese starts to melt down, and those chunky bits that didn't melt down quite, or that didn't get broken down quite as nicely, are in, that's when I start adding my finer shredded cheese. So now I'm starting to add the nicely shredded portions of the cheddar cheeses, and you can just see how ridiculously thick this sauce is. In order to make sure that I scrape down the sides, I tend to just really crank my whisk over to the sides as I'm stirring, allowing the whisk to scrape as I stir rather than having to go back and scrape the sides in between the stirs. And you just keep this moving. You keep it beautifully mixed up so that all the cheese melts in and just becomes this ooey gooey mess of a sauce. It is just absolutely ridiculous. This is not something that you want to eat every day this will cause you to have heart issues, but every now and then, oh hell yes. This is absolutely delicious. So you just keep on mixing in your cheeses a little bit at a time. You don't want to throw in too much because it'll drop the temperature of the sauce and become difficult to get it all to melt nicely. So I think I put it in like 4 different groupings of cheese. So you just put it in, you stir it around, you get it all incorporated, you give it a couple moments for it to come back up to temperature, and then give it another stir, make sure that it's completely incorporated, you add some more cheese, continue the process, and you just do that bit by bit by bit. One thing that you'll notice as this continues is I'm not seasoning at this point, because the salt, or all of the cheeses have a fair bit of salt, so I don't want to end up salting early and end up with something way too salty. I'll do that all towards the end of when the cheese sauce is done. But you really just want to make sure that you keep this moving. And I'm making way too much for the mac and cheese that I'm going to be serving up or preparing for this. So I'm going to reserve about half of this cheese sauce, because this is absolutely insane on a score of different things. I'm probably going to make some lovely pan-roasted new potatoes later on. I'll probably smash them, get a nice crispy bit, and throw some of this cheese sauce that I've reserved on those, because goddamn, it's delicious. You can use this cheese sauce on eggs, you can use this cheese sauce on damn near anything. Anything that goes well with cheddar cheese, you can use this cheese sauce on. It is sinful, and you can see how it just kind of sheets off the whisk. It's becoming beautifully thick and just, oh god. It's an amazing sauce. Again, you don't want to rush. This is something that needs to be done slowly so that it heats up the right way. And this video that you're watching is playing at about 2 times speed. So this took a bit over 20 some minutes to get the sauce how I wanted it to be. But it is so worth it. Just look at that sheet off. It's amazing. I love that sauce. Don't eat it every day. Good God, don't eat it every day. But when you're having a feast, a special occasion, or just you decide, I want to have insane mac and cheese, go for this. You will not be sorry. When it does get to the point where I decided to add some additional seasoning, it's towards the end, once all the cheese is incorporated. That's when you want to taste it a lot and figure out, do I want to add some salt? I decide to add a bit of salt. I add a smoked salt just to heighten that element of flavor. If you like pepper, throw in some pepper. You can also throw in herbs if you want. Make this sauce your own. This is just a basic or an indulgent base bechamel that I then step up and make it something insane for this mac and cheese. One thing that I find when it comes to my mac and cheese sauce that just adds a little oomph is a really good mustard. So I put probably about a teaspoon and a half of a really good spicy brown mustard into the sauce, and I made sure that I incorporated entirely. Okay, so here we are at my desk again. And as you can see, I have my cheese sauce. I've already incorporated about half of the pasta that I'm using for this, and like I said, I pulled off about half of the sauce and reserved it for meals later on in the week. But now that the pasta's done, and you can use whatever sort of pasta you like best, I'm just using some elbow macaroni. It does wonderfully in this application. And you can see that it's still steaming away. I just pulled it out. But you want to make sure that any pasta that you use is a bit undercooked, because it's going to keep cooking as you put this in to bake. So you want to dump all your pasta into the sauce. Mine sticks a little bit, so I had to whack and stir and pull it out in order to get it to come out all the way. That's perfectly fine. It doesn't do anything to the dish. Came out beautifully. So, just get all your pasta into the same pot that you made your sauce, and then you want to stir it around. This is also a point where you can add anything else into this macaroni, just like the seasoning point where I added the little bit of salt and then that spicy brown mustard. You can add whatever you want to it at this point. Throw in some bacon, get a bacon mac going, brown up some ground beef, throw that in, cheeseburger mac. Get pulled pork. You can either make pulled pork yourself or just buy your favorite type of pulled pork. Throw that in. So you can see there's a little bit of water in my pan from when I had the pasta sitting there. It won't harm anything. I'm just gonna dump my pasta into there. My unbelievably unctuous, gooey, delicious mac and cheese. I'm sorry that my recording crapped out while I was doing this part, because as I was mixing that, it was making all kinds of just fantastically borderline lewd and lascivious noises as I was stirring the macaroni into it. It's a fantastic sauce. And then, as my topping, I just have some panko breadcrumbs and Parmesan cheese mixed together. It gives a really nice crunchy top. The cheese melts down, the panko gets golden brown, it just becomes another little added layer of flavor, and the Parmesan adds just a little bit more saltiness, and it adds some texture to it. Because let's be honest, macaroni and cheese without a nice crunchy layer becomes kind of one note on a texture base. But this mac and cheese, oh god, this mac and cheese is fantastic. This will just go into an oven at 400 degrees until the pasta's the rest of the way cooked, and that top is a nice golden brown. The cheese is melted down onto the rest of the cheesy mac and cheese goodness. But, like I said, make this your own. Add in different seasonings. You can throw in some hot sauce into this, get a bit of a spicier kick going in your mac and cheese. You can doctor it up however you want. Use different cheeses. You can make a taco mac and cheese by adding some peppers and some cayenne, some smoked paprika, cumin, a few other spices into it. Add some ground beef. It'll be absolutely delicious. It is insanely simple to make. It just takes some time. And like I said, this is not something that you want to eat every day, but damn, it's good. Okay, so here we are rest of my dinner's ready. I just did a flank steak and cooked that up. Absolutely beautiful. Cut it against the grain and add an angle. So, as I've said before, you want the last cut to be against the grain. And the reason for that is flank steak is a fairly fibrous piece of meat. But just look how this absolutely can be torn apart. Just by my fingers, no knife needed. That's why you cut it against the grain. Shortens up those muscle fibers. But that isn't the point of this video. That's just another aside. This is the point of the video. This mac and cheese, fresh out of the oven. You can see how crispy and crunchy that was as I was breaking through that top. And now let's scoop this beautiful, beautiful mess out of here. It's still ooey and gooey deliciousness under that nice crispy crust. So let's get a nice serving of this. There we go. And Goddamn. This is not your Wednesday night dinner go to every week. This is so much richer and just unbelievably delicious, but if you had this every day of the week, every week, you would probably have a heart attack much sooner rather than later. So, because of the cheeses that I used, as I said, I used a smoked cheddar. I get just a fantastic smokiness. I get the sharpness of the sharp cheddar that I use. I got the creaminess of the Gouda. That special little saltiness that you get when you use Parmesan. All the flavors just blend amazingly. And that crispy, crunchy top, oh my god. As I've said, this is absolutely sinful. There's no other way of describing it, from the added creamy unctuousness of not just using milk in the bechamel, but starting off and using more of that heavy cream than I do of the milk. Just gets this really satisfying fattiness to it. Doing it nice and slow made sure that the cheese sauce didn't break and just absolutely coated every single noodle, glommed onto each and every nook and cranny. And then finishing it off in the oven, letting all those flavors marry together just that little bit more, and getting that needed textural part of the crispy panko and that fantastic Parmesan crust. Mm. This is good. And you get that little kick in flavor from the mustard. Not too much. It doesn't overpower. It's not like you're eating a mouthful of mustard. Just adds another layer of flavor. And you can throw in whatever you want into this mac and cheese. You can change the flavors, change the cheeses. Add in pulled pork. I've done that many times. Oh, God. Making a pulled pork mac and cheese like this. Or throw in bacon mac. I was originally thinking I might do that, but I ended up doing it without the bacon. Just this deliciousness in and of itself is easily enough. You can adapt it to whatever dishes you're going to be serving with it. You can add different spices. Do a couple shakes of the hot sauce bottle as you're making that bechamel. Get a nice heat to it if you want. You can do a garlic mac and cheese. You can do lobster mac. Any flavor combination. This is just a vehicle. Have fun with it. But, oh God, the vehicle that this is. Well, I've scarfed down enough on camera, and my God, I just want to clean this entire plate, and I will the moment that this camera goes off. But first, I should say goodbye to you guys and give you my normal challenge of try something new. I don't believe that there's a single person who hasn't had a mac and cheese. Some of you might not have had a proper mac and cheese. It's finished off in the oven, starts with a bechamel, and kicks the ever-living crap out of any other type of mac and cheese that you can possibly imagine. Try this one. If this one's like the ones that you've had in the past, try different flavors. Try different cheeses. Have you had smoked cheeses like this one has, or have you just gone for normal cheeses? Add in some smoked cheeses. It adds a fantastic layer of flavor. How about the pulled pork mac and cheese? Have you had pulled pork mac and cheese before? You can either make pulled pork yourself, or you can go out, get your favorite type of pulled pork, make this mac and cheese. When you're adding the noodles in, add in your pulled pork, stir it around. When you're adding in mustard, you can add in a little bit of the barbecue sauce for the pulled pork, and oh, it's absolutely fantastic. Trust me on that. Well, hell, don't trust me. Try it. Tell me what you think. But with that, have a good one all. I need to finish this plate, get it completely clean, and that's not going to last very long afterwards. This will at most last a couple days, if I'm lucky. But have a good one all.